Okay, Clay, before we get into our coverage of Real Life, our latest Voyager episode, I, apropos of nothing, have a trivia question for you. It was recently in the news that the original Brady Bunch house in Studio City, California, went on the market for $5.5 million, and it sold just the other day on Monday for how much?
2.3.
3.2.
Ah.
So you had it backwards, but you were close.
I did hear that it sold at a loss.
Oh, okay. I was wondering in this market how you could go under, but I guess these are the only houses that are selling for less than what people are listing them for.
Houses that have no actual living value and are just based off of 50-year-old television shows.
Well, the headline from People for my Google result is "Woman who bought Brady Bunch home calls it the worst investment." So there you go. It's only got nowhere to go down.
Do you remember? I don't know if you were a Simpsons watcher or a Fox Kids watcher back in the day, but do you remember there was a contest to win the Simpsons house? And you would win. It was like a scale replica of the Simpsons house, painted the same way, decorated the same way. It was exactly like the cartoon,
right? But a scale replica, you mean in the sense that it's a normal sized house, but it's
it is. Yeah, but it is just the Simpsons house, but it is human sized.
Where was it in a town called Springfield?
No, I think it was outside of Las Vegas somewhere.
Yeah, okay, where the land is dirt cheap and you can get away with doing something like that. Yeah.
But that was always one of those things that, when you're 10, you're going like, oh my God, that's the greatest thing anyone could ever win in history. And I don't know what, I think I learned what happened to it at some point. I think whoever owned it completely renovated it and made it not the Simpsons house.
They turned it into like the Fred Flintstone house or something like that. This is not the house that I was looking for.
But I always wondered, how long can you live in that kind of house? I mean, is the Brady Bunch house this? It can't look like the set on the inside.
It looks the same. It looked the same
on the inside.
When I was looking at it. Hold on a second here. Are there any pictures of it?
Because I would be shocked if they actually shot, unless they remodeled it to look like the.
It's been renovated to look exactly like the set. So so maybe someone did change it at some points, but now it looks identical now to what it looks like on the TV show.
Gotcha. That's a waste of money.
Yeah, that's something right there. I mean, you have a limited audience. I'll send you a picture of what the interior looks like at this point, but you have a limited. Audience.
Oh yeah, look at that.
Yeah, so it looks kind of cool.
Shot WandaVision.
Yeah, I mean it looks cool. I don't know if I would want to live there, but if that was like an Airbnb, I would think that was kind of a cool place.
Yeah.
Anyway,
it reminds me of the cabin on Lake Winnipesaukee that my dad's boss had.
Yep.
30 years ago that he would let us use every now and then, which was something he probably bought 30 years before that and had never changed. So it was lots of wood paneling, lots of this old kind of that furniture that's clearly just like plastic wood grain stuck on top of shitty wood.
Yep. Painted and painted over wallpaper. This is Real Life IRL. This is the 22nd episode of the third season of Star Trek Voyager. First aired on the 23rd of April, 1997. Teleplay goes to Jerry Taylor. Story credit goes to Harry Doc Clore. Directed by Anson Williams. In universe date 50836.2, which is 2373. In Real Life IRL, the Doctor learns a few real-life lessons with the holographic family, quote-unquote, he created. Voyager investigates a massive subspace distortion. I brought up the Brady Bunch house because the opening to this is obviously sort of like parodying like a 50s sitcom type arrangement with the Brady Bunch style home and everything like that. But for people who are having trouble remembering, this is basically the one where the Doctor creates a holographic family, and then there's a B plot that has something going on in it, which with like a space tornado or something.
Can I describe to you every B plot in Voyager? Mm-hmm. I think we have a chance to get some more energy if we just... Nope.
too bad. Well, I mean, in between the note and that, there's about 15 minutes of them trying to chase the thing around to stick a thermometer into it or something like that. But this was a particularly bad B plot, I thought. It
was not great.
I mean, we might as well. You can get it out of the way because they bend over backwards to make it somehow tie into the A plot at the very end. In that, Bobby Dunks risks his life, and the doctor gets upset about that. But
it was so. I found myself thinking in that last scene, I was like, why is Paris the one having this conversation with him? Paris, is he even aware that he's got this fake family and has been doing this stuff?
No.
It should be B'Elanna, shouldn't it?
Yeah, it should be B'Elanna, the one who programmed his daughter to die, would be the one that he should probably have a talking to.
If you you could not have picked the worst person to program your fake family for you.
Yeah, the half Klingon person might be tough. The B plot here is, it's the only thing that's worth mentioning about it is it's like tremendous in how irrelevant it all is. It's a combination of it accomplishes nothing. The storm itself is not really that impressive, and Paris just gets stuck in it for about 10 minutes. But it's like it's just pure technobabble and a problem for the sake of there being a problem without any stakes whatsoever attached to the B plot.
Yeah, it was really silly. Like, again, they could have just used footage from another episode where they do almost this exact same thing.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't even have noticed, frankly.
No. So we can mostly talk about the A plot, unless you have anything else you want to talk about with the B plot there.
No, it's just so funny where it's like we've found this giant energy source that keeps exploding and our probe is gone. What should we do? Captain, I want to drive into it.
Yeah,
all right.
Yeah.
Just, take one of our 1,500 shuttlecrafts we have and just go crazy, man.
Actually, you're reminding me that there was something I wanted to talk about. So what leads them to discover this thing is that they are trying to find like a space station that they're familiar with, and they find the debris field, and they understand that the thing has been destroyed. Janeway at that moment immediately assumes that it's been attacked by someone, and there's no evidence that it's been attacked by anyone. I was just thinking, why doesn't she just think it was an accident and the thing just blew up? Because they specifically say there's no traces. How many
times has that happened, though?
It was the stuff you should know is about the Hyatt Regency walkway disaster in 1981. I was just listening to that before we started recording, but it's like there's so many structural failures, I think, that you could make a podcast on. I think that the space station could have been one of them if only she gave it the chance.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, when has that ever been the case in Star Trek? They ever go? It's like Obi-Wan, the Millennium Falcon pulls out of hyperspace at Alderaan, and they're like, I'm sensing the screams of millions of lives snuffed out in an instant. I have to assume it was some sort of engine failure.
At least they see the Death Star before they make assumptions. That's all I'm saying. That here, that's true. Janeway just goes, someone shot them and killed them, and we're going to find out who that was because we love them. I honestly don't even, they reference who those people are, but I don't think that we've ever met them before. So they come and go. Familiar. Yeah. That's the only thing that I thought was kind of memorable about that whole sequence. Otherwise, it's Voyager on a shuttlecraft flying into a space tornado and people being scared by it, and that's the end. Although whatever one you consider to be the A plot, I suppose the A plot is the Doctor storyline, although they get equal shrift. Holographic family,
which is bonkers, frankly.
It kind of is. So, what'd you think of the holographic family plot line?
I actually really liked it. I thought it was really good. It reminded me, when the episode started, I had questions because I guess the doctor chose to program his wife after the mom from Sleepaway Camp, which is a joke for all you rotten horror heads out there.
She has the same haircut, basically.
Trust me, it's hilarious. No, it's more the way she acts. The mother at the beginning of Sleepaway Camp is completely unhinged in her acting, which is what this woman is. But the first thing I thought was WandaVision.
Yeah. Yes.
And to a different extent, what WandaVision is kind of sort of based on is a Marvel Comics series called Vision, which is obviously about Vision, where Vision has created a family of androids that he lives with. That it doesn't exactly go like this, but one of them kills somebody, which is fun.
Yep.
But yeah, it was. I thought it was. I really enjoyed it. Actually, I thought it was. I was not expecting it to get as dark as it does.
Well, someone's got to die at the end of every Star Trek Voyager episode.
Yeah, it was a bit much. That his daughter fucking knocked her head. Not since Worf's soccer playing murder.
Has a cranium
head injury during a sport been so devastating in Star Trek.
Yeah, for the amount of damage she did.
Sorry, go ahead.
Well,
for
the amount of damage she did. All I could think about was, I think, what was it, Liam Neeson's wife, right? Which he just fell over on, like standing on the bunny slope or something and hit her head. There's no blood, there's no nothing, but you just die after that. That's all I can think of. But for the way they were describing it, I expected there to be a little bit more damage, but apparently not. It's just blurry vision and then death.
Well, the thing that I found surprising is, like, last season or whenever, we watched an episode where they have the technology to keep Neelix alive by, like, creating fake
holographic
teleporter lungs in his body, but
blood
his
clots
daughter
out of the question.
Yeah, his daughter whacks her head and starts bleeding internally, and it's just like, well, I guess that's all we can do. He's
like, I fixed one blood clot and another appears. It's unstoppable. You're going to die. There's no way around it. I don't know what to think about the real life storyline, frankly.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if this is good or bad. The thing.
I was just gonna say I kind of feel the same way, because like I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but I was having the same feelings where I did like it, but as it was drawing to a close, I'm like, I can't tell if this is too much.
Yeah, I would say it's unquestionably too much for me. Like, I think that on a tone level, I think it's way too melodramatic to be effective. It feels like an after-school special when she's laying on the bed and they all come in and they're like, goodbye, Belle, or whatever her name is.
Also, I felt like the change in family was realistic until the end part, because I think it's 9 times out of 10, the brother is going to become more detached and probably join more gangs after his younger sister dies.
Yeah.
I don't think that's going to turn him around magically.
Why weren't they the Kazon instead of the Klingons? Wouldn't that make more sense?
Because B'Elanna programmed it.
Oh, that's true. But still, the Kazon are street gangs, right? We talked about this. They're based on LA street gangs of the time, and that would make more sense for...
I guess we know how she feels about her own people.
For Reginald to be joining them. So I think I'm leaning, I'm leaning towards I don't really like this. Although I think it's an okay idea, but what really had me stuck was mostly the fact that, like, it's a storyline that reminds me that Voyager is really trying to do a TNG impression, like a very hard TNG impression. And it's not quite as good as that show. And so when it does things like this, I'm left thinking, like, this reminds me a lot of a TNG episode, or this would have been better as a Data episode or something. Like, it's in this weird position where unless you do something different, like what DS9 was trying to do, you're really just kind of treading the same water with, there's a character who's not human but kind of wants to be human or sentient or something like that. And like the Doctor obviously fits into the Data, Spock, and Odo characterization. But the problem is you start to, because they've already done sort of the obvious things, which is like Spock is an alien who doesn't feel emotion. So he's relatively human but not really human because he's missing a key aspect of him. Then they move to Data, who is a robot and not human at all. And there's a question about, like, is he even a human? And then you get to the Doctor, and the Doctor is a computer program at its core. And you run into this weird thing where he makes a holographic family and he interacts with them, but he's obviously superior to them because he can turn them off, basically. Like, it's not like Data building like a clone of himself or something and looking at a robot that's talking to him.
Right.
The Doctor's just dealing with these other program objects. And it's sort of like it's moving far enough away from any sort of like realistic outlook about like what a human would be into this very abstract notion of like, if I just create this false reality, is that good enough for me to experience it as if it was a real thing that was happening? You know, it's weird. It's like it's 2 levels too far from something. It's kind of like if it wasn't the Doctor, if anyone else experienced this, does it mean anything? If Paris had a very sad hologram program, right? Am I supposed to feel something for him? And in that case, why do I feel anything for the Doctor here because he did it? Just because he's a hologram that does it?
Well, I think part of it is that it's meant to feel that removed because the Doctor isn't doing it because the Doctor is approaching it as the most clinical of science experiments, basically. Like Data wants to do that stuff because he honestly wants to become more like a human.
Yeah.
I don't get that sense from the Doctor. When the Doctor does this stuff, I feel like he's just kind of doing it for the experience, just in a more what's the word, academic sense.
Sure.
Whereas Data does it more for because he actually wants to the experience.
Yeah.
Which is why when B'Elanna changes the program, it means that he has to actually face what he is trying to experience. You know, he has to go all the way into the pool instead of just up to his knees.
Yes.
So I like it because of that, because I do think the Doctor is different from Spock and different from Data in that he doesn't really, I don't know. I never really get the sense that he wants to be a human. You know, I think he wants to catalog the experience, but I don't think he wants to become a human the way that Data does.
I think it's the lines are becoming blurry, right? Because why outside of wanting, in what sense does him wanting to have a hollow emitter do anything other than make it seem like he's more of a real person? Why does he care about being off of the sick bay and stuff like that, right? Like, so the I think it's inevitable that the more freedom you give the Doctor and the more that you respect him as like, as opposed to the way that they did in early seasons, which was like they would always forget about him and stuff like that. The more that he becomes a remembered person who's walking around everywhere and doing everything, I feel it's inevitable that he just is basically now being fully respected as a person, and he's trying to get to that point. Like, so it's more abstract than he wants to be human. He wants to be respected like a human, but I think it becomes this like negligible difference down the line because his storyline is still going to operate like a Data storyline in a lot of ways.
Yeah, I do still think that there is a difference though, because I think he does want that respect, and obviously being able to move around is a more human experience. But I think he is. I guess let's put it this way: he may want to be treated more human, but the way that he goes about doing that is still locked into his more black and white clinical programming.
Okay.
You know?
Yeah.
So like, yes, he wants to experience what it's like to have a family, but the way he's going to choose to do that isn't, I need to really get in there and feel the dirt and grime of what it's like to be raising a family. It's a lot more surface level. It's a lot more sleek for him, I think, than it would be for a Data.
So I kind of get hung up on, like, this episode didn't really work for me on an emotional level, and I don't know if it's because of the melodrama sort of spoiled it or the way that it was paced or something like that. But like, I was drawn, I know we've brought this episode a lot up recently, but like something like The Inner Light, right? Why do I feel much more sympathy and empathy for Picard at the end of that episode than I do for the Doctor in this episode? Did you think of The Inner Light?
You're gonna have to answer that question for yourself, I think.
Well, like, what's the Would you agree Inner Light is a far more effective episode than this episode is?
Yes.
Why?
Yeah.
Is it just because they told the story better? Or is it because I think there's something more core to the problem with this fake reality that the Doctor creates is that it's like it's like wantonly manipulative or something. Like at least within the context of the Inner Light episode, that stuff actually happened and Picard lived that kind of life.
Right.
You know? So there's this like gravity to the whole situation of like you internally understand that a lot of time has passed. He spent a lot of time with these people. He grew to know them. He thought it was reality in a lot of sense, right? The Doctor knows this is all bullshit. Like everyone knows this is bullshit. What's going on in the holodeck, and I think it's just a very weird thing for me to look at this episode and say the death of these hologram people is effective enough for the Doctor to realize something about experience emotion or like living with a family or something. Like I get it, but it doesn't seem right to me because he even has the knowledge that he could just pause the program and delete it and he doesn't have to go through this, and Paris talks him out of it, which I think is like a decent point, but I'm stuck with the idea like if this was anyone but the Doctor, they would put them in a loony bin, right? For being like, these aren't real people, Tom. Like, don't worry about it.
Well,
none of this is happening.
I don't know. I mean, I feel like you could say that about anything on the holodeck, and they do these kinds of emotional holodeck stories all the time.
Do they? What was the last like emotional holodeck story?
You know, that one where
they're always trapped on the holodeck.
Yeah, you know, the one where Cass gets, she's married and has a puppy that dies.
Was that a real episode? I don't think I don't think anyone ever really emotionally connects with the hologram.
What about what's his name? The guy who was having sex with all of them.
Barclay. Yeah, but
Barclay.
He's just using them. He's using them as a tool.
Geordi falls in love with the holographic lady doctor.
Version of a real woman, though. There's like a reality to that. Like he's using her as a stand-in. I think if this was an episode about Tom Paris,
O'Brien and Bashir fell in love with each other on the holodeck. That's got to count for something.
That's fine. I think you're dodging my point here, which is profound. Excuse me. Which is that
they've never done an episode of any of this series where someone falls in love, a human falls in love with a holodeck character. They must have done that.
They probably have, but I don't think it. I think that they would ground it in something else. Like the Geordi one is the closest that I think you're going to get, which is that he creates a version of a real person and it doesn't line up with his expectation of the person, you know?
Sure.
But I think that, like, I think there's the one where Riker, in early TNG, one of the alien species hijacks the Enterprise and they put Riker and trap him in the holodeck with a character called Minuet, I think. And he kind of like, he gets infatuated with her and is impressed that the holodeck is doing such a good job of creating a woman that he finds attractive. But he's not like devastated when Minuet turns out to be a fake person, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Because I think for what the point of the program is, I just don't know. Like, if you were going to try and tell this story with the Doctor and give him this experience that was meant to be profound for him, is there really... I mean, unless you actually put him in charge of a family, like a real family, which I guess you could go that way if you wanted to.
Yeah.
Is it... That's kind of really the only other way you could do it, right? Like, why is it that... Why don't you think it works for the Doctor specifically? Because, I mean, I guess I could be on board saying, like, yeah, if it was Paris who was in the situation and it was just like he felt like having a family, so he built a holodeck program, and yeah, maybe not. But I mean, the Doctor is himself a hologram, so there is that element baked into it.
But it's weird that he's the superior hologram too, right? Like he's their creator hologram, and he doesn't. Right. We've talked about this before. He doesn't interact with other holograms in a way that makes sense to me, because the Doctor is clearly on like a higher operating level than the other holograms. Like he's his own sentient little creature. And he creates these holograms that are not that. And so it feels weird there where he's not even really on equal footing with them to have an equal interaction with them. I think that the problem for me is that you could maybe... It would maybe be more effective if it didn't feel so rapid, I guess. And that's what's interesting about the Inner Light, is that the Inner Light takes place over the same amount of time, but I really feel like you live with Picard in that situation. Like this one obviously has 20 minutes of that stupid fucking B plot distracting you from everything, right?
Right.
And maybe if you spent a little bit more time with the family, but I'm kind of all over the place. But the other problem I have is it ties into like the fact that they're holograms and artificial, is that you never really spend time with a family that feels like a normal family, right? Because it goes from a 50s sitcom perfect family to all of them have like absurd cliche problems, you know? Mm-hmm. And so there's never a moment where he's chilling out with a normal, cool family that he feels like he's never connected with before. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, I will say that, not having kids myself, I have observed that the secondary version is a lot more truer to life than the first version is.
Yeah.
I would assume that the most common thing I've run into with people with kids of a certain age is the kids not knowing where shoes are and shit. That seemed very relatable and written by someone who actually has gone through that stuff.
The shoes go in the shoe bin.
Yeah. Well, but what happens when they don't? They just get thrown off, and
not my problem. You got to find them, kid. You go find your shoes.
Yeah, but again, I think I know what you're saying, but like, this is kind of why I think it's a bit of a disservice to not have B'Elanna address this on the other end, because it does feel like there's no reason. The reason that B'Elanna jacks up the dial so much, is because because she knows that he doesn't know what it's like to really go through like the worst parts of having a family, or the toughest parts. So I don't know if she would just if she had just adjusted it slightly so they were all kind of just more normal and well adjusted and pretty reasonable, I don't think it would have been the point she was trying to get across to him. But
I would have bought his feeling tragedy when they die, because I think that what I'm saying the problem is that when you go from the 50s sitcom family, right, to this clearly artificially jacked up version of a problem family, you have no reality within there where you're like, the Doctor can't step aside and say, this actually feels like a real thing, instead of a program that's clearly been programmed a certain way that you're interacting with.
Okay, I see what you're saying, yeah.
So if B'Elanna had just jacked it up slightly, I would have actually found it more effective, because if she created a more real version of a family, I could see why the Doctor would want to spend time there. And if the Doctor spends time there and I start losing myself in the episode saying, like, these people seem like a really great fit with each other, when the kid dies at the end, I might actually feel sad for everything.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think you're right. I think that's probably why it feels so melodramatic at the end, is because it comes at the tail end of highly
violence.
Intense melodrama. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I mean, I don't know what happens when you flake out on one of those Klingon blood rituals. They might be coming for him, or maybe he killed somebody and he doesn't feel great about it.
Yeah, I liked the metaphor of like Klingons being the kids that you're the Klingons being the friends of your kids that you don't want your kids hanging out with. I thought it was kind of a cute little metaphor of if maybe a little bit too Star Trek-y for what it was. Like, I think that ties into my problem too, is that like even in the conflict of what the kid is, even in the meat of what the conflict is between the Doctor and the kid, it's still so Star Trek-y and overblown that I find it distracting. It's like,
sure,
because I'm like, oh, it's kind of a cute metaphor, but it's like, this is kind of weird that he's talking about like he wants to be like a Klingon and they have an honor that the Doctor doesn't have and stuff. I found it a little bit distracting. I I think that's probably the difference between the Inner Light. Like the Inner Light is Picard living a normal, happy life that he always wanted for 30 minutes of the episode, you know?
Right.
And this is not. This is this is the Doctor sort of doing a sitcom thing of like running around, pulling his hair out, what's left of his hair, while all these problems go on around him that he can't solve. Mm-hmm. I think one of the reviews said it moved from a Brady Bunch sitcom to a Married with Children sitcom. And that feels right to me about it. And I think that's my problem with it, because once you get to the end and the kid dies and you have to have this dramatic scene, it's been so overblown that it can only be melodrama at that point, because there's nothing left that's realistic, or there's nothing real about any of it.
And also, I don't know, he asked his kid to play on the other team, and she said okay, and then she died.
Yeah, he does bear the brunt of this.
I'm not saying that that's what killed her, but if she was playing with people who were older and more experienced, maybe she doesn't get hurt.
Was she doing Parisi Squares? Have we ever seen that game, or has it only been mentioned in the show? I think it might.
I don't know if we've ever seen it, because
it's not Imbo Jitsu, unfortunately.
I recognized the name, but I couldn't remember where I recognized it from.
Yeah, maybe they've just brought it up. And I think that, besides what's his problem with his wife in this episode? Just that she's stressed out? Is that all?
It's because ever since they got married, Wes, she doesn't do the dishes the way that she used to.
Yeah, he does bring that up.
No, I think I think his problem with his wife is that he's a dickhead, because
yes, basically, yeah.
She's got stuff that she wants to do, and he's like, what if you just stayed home and made food for us instead?
Well, that was another sort of weird thing. Like when he has the team meeting and he reschedules everything for the family, he doesn't really have to reconcile that at all, right? Like I guess that's him trying to control the program because he knows it's all fake and the program is rebelling against him, but it's not. I wouldn't really say that's the point.
I don't know if it's that. I think it's him not understanding that when you have a family, other people, there's compromise and sacrifices everybody needs to make, not just everybody for you.
Yeah, that's the family metaphor.
Right. I don't think it's a question of him messing with the program or anything.
Oh, see, I mean, I completely understand that. It's like thematically, it represents. It's what you're saying. It's like if this was a real family, it's that you can't just be the sort of like leader of the group or whatever. It's a shared organism or whatever you want to call it. But the reason he's trying to do that, to me, makes sense in that he is the author of this program, and like they should do these things for him. Like I'd be interested in that conflict of whether or not like he thinks that he can actually run this thing because he created it and he wants to, but he's learning that he can't actually control it. And maybe that's the metaphor that's buried within it. But I just thought the scene itself didn't really amount to anything, because all it does is it gets everyone grumpy, but then everyone drops it at the end. No one cares about the rescheduling except for the girl dies, obviously, because he rescheduled it to Tuesday instead of Wednesday or whatever.
Yeah, it's I don't know. I don't know if it's what else you do with that plot point, really. Other than just have that one scene where he realizes that there are more people that need to be cared about besides just himself.
Mm-hmm. Which is, I mean, is that a weird storyline for a Doctor character, or do you think that's in line with the Doctor characterization? Right? Because he's kind of written aloof and grumpy, but he is a Doctor whose primary thing is to fix people and to take care of others,
Right. Yeah, I mean, I think it's I think it is in line with his characterization, because he does kind of value his own time more than anybody else's.
Yeah, and he thinks very highly of himself. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe it's a sort of deeper question about whether or not the Doctor is set up appropriately. Like I mean, because the Doctor's characterization, again, to retrain, the Doctor's characterization is not super far off from Bones, right?
Sure.
I think he's kind of Bones-like in that way, that he strongly opinionated and sort of like not a team player, sort of. I don't know if I would go that far, but like I don't know how I would describe him. Just kind of persnickety, I guess would be the way to describe him. But anything else about real life here? The storyline itself.
Where do I start?
You sounded pretty positive about it. What did you like the best of the real life storyline, the sitcom family?
I thought it was a good turn for him, and I thought it was a more interesting thing they'd done on the show than it's funny because there's it's been 2 episodes in a row of characters living fake lives, which is interesting.
Oh yeah, it's true.
But yeah, I thought it was an interesting thing to do with him. Like I like these kind of turns on the Data wants to be a human kind of thing, doing it through the Doctor. I think I understand that there's diminishing returns when you do this stuff, but it was a new wrinkle that I feel like they never really did with any of those other characters. Like I don't think does Data ever have a family that he needs to deal with or anything?
Well, he has his real family. Like he has Lore and his mother and his father. That's I mean, that to me, that I find that to be a big problem, really, is like the lack of reality without spending time in the lack of reality thinking that it is reality. Like to me, to me that matters a lot. Like you can't spend time in a fake world and the lesson learned feels less important than if you were in the world and it becomes your world, you know? Like because the DS9 episode with O'Brien did the same, where it's like he's in prison for a couple minutes, but the prison sentence is they hook him up to a machine, which makes him feel like he spent 50 years in prison or something like that.
Oh, right, yeah.
Like something deeper has to impact you, I think. Like you have to really experience it, and I think the holographic family didn't do that, but I do like like in the context of Voyager, I really like the idea of the characters on the show escaping to the holodeck to find something that they can't find on the ship. You know?
Sure, yeah.
And that sort of works for the Doctor here. I wish they did with other characters, and maybe I'd feel a little bit more sympathetic towards it. But I do think that the holodeck on Voyager is probably the most important holodeck out of all the franchise series, but I don't think the show recognizes that.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think it has the biggest potential to really be used as a tool. But they don't really do that.
It's
as much as they could.
Yeah. Okay, we'll just go to Patreon thoughts then. If we are done with this one, if you guys enjoyed the content today, you can support the show at patreon.com/the Pensky File. You can leave your thoughts about upcoming episodes. You get extra podcasts. You get a whole bunch of stuff at patreon.com/the Pensky File. Now we're going to read some of the comments that are left, and I'm speaking slowly so I can find your Discord chat bubble. I have a hard time finding the chat bubble when I'm under duress trying to find out where the chat is, and I found it, but it took me a long time. I will send you this one from Kyle Barat. You can go first.
Real life. I don't know whether to be angry or applaud the massive balls on the writers for daring to have Chakotay exclaim, "I've never seen anything like that before," when describing a space anomaly the likes of which he sees every fucking episode.
Yep.
The B plot is pure generic filler, but the Doctor storyline is good. The Doctor learns and grows, even though his once goal of being respected as an individual has now drifted too close to wanting to be human. I could see Data in the storyline. I also think the idea of a human wanting to be a Klingon could be a good story in a new show. They could be trans species using medication and surgery to become Klingon and explore the reactions to such a thing from humans and Klingons alike in a transgender parallel, although the shows don't seem to do metaphor anymore and get it wrong, and goodbye career. 3, oh shit, I just realized I've pitched Ash Tyler out of 5. You know what actually would have been an interesting twist on this.
On Ash Tyler or this episode?
On this episode is if B'Elanna makes the adjustments and then he goes into this new wacky family and he actually doesn't, or I should say, not that he doesn't, but along the way he realizes that what B'Elanna has actually programmed is her own childhood.
Right.
And so what he's actually experiencing is B'Elanna dealing with being a half human, half Klingon.
Yeah.
And so that's where the gang stuff comes from. It's a completely different episode, but I feel like there could be something interesting there where you could get two realizations at the end of it. The doctor gets to experience the family thing, but he also helps B'Elanna work through some generational trauma or whatever.
Yeah. No, that would have definitely added layers to it. Yeah, I'd agree. Excuse me. Thank you, Kyle. Norman Buckwald says, real life, this is a slightly overrated Doctor episode that, as far as concept goes, works well. I do agree with what the other podcast critics have surmised, that B'Elanna deliberately made the Doctor's life hell with her revisions, including deliberately killing off the daughter. But remember what he did to her in Darkling. Wendy Shaw, who plays Francine in American Dad, actually plays the holographic wife, which makes me wonder if Seth MacFarlane saw this episode and said, aha, I found my perfect trophy wife for Stan, obviously pre-B'Elanna revision. Still, guess what? Death of losing his daughter is never referenced to again. 2.5 forgotten griefs for the Doctor out of 5.
I think that is one thing that kind of drills into the point that you were making earlier, is like he has to talk to B'Elanna about this, because even though he's experiencing what he's experiencing, the fact remains that B'Elanna programmed this to happen.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
And so if I was him, I would be like, why did you program the worst possible thing? Why did did she have to die?
Well, I guess I would agree that B'Elanna programmed it. Are we sure that B'Elanna has intent? Like I could see an argument that B'Elanna just said, let's have a lot of horrible shit happen, and she cranked up that dial, but she didn't know that someone was going to die.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's easy to believe, yeah.
But I would agree that I think you have to bring B'Elanna back into it for something.
Yeah, I think you have to.
Either way, even if it's unintentional what she's done, she should go back. She should be at the bedside with the Doctor in the final scene, I think. That would make a little bit more sense.
Because otherwise, you've got that scene. I was wrong. I forgot they do have that scene where he decides he doesn't want to do it anymore, and Paris tells him all that he's got to experience the whole thing.
You've got to, Doc. You got to.
And there's a certain when it's someone who's not B'Elanna and not the person trying to make a point, there is a certain feeling of it where it's like he's trying to convince him he has to finish Last of Us 2.
Yeah.
Or he's played a video game. Yeah, he's played a video game that took a plot turn that was more than he expected to have to deal with, and he doesn't want to face it again. It's like, well, you need to. You need to finish the game.
Doc, you bought the game full price at $70. If you played it 1.5 hours, you're not getting the value out of that game that you rightfully deserve.
You pre-ordered that game a year and a half ago, Doc.
It came with a shitty plastic chalice with a box set thing, and you've got it on your desk collecting dust.
You ordered early. You got the swimsuit skin for your wife. I didn't get that because I waited, and I regret it every day of my life.
Every day I write the book. Thank you very much to... Who was that? That was Norman. Thank you. I thought I had a point out of that as well. I guess I don't. Royo says, real life, this episode has been repeatedly described as emotional blackmail, almost as cruel as B'Elanna having the Doctor's daughter intentionally killed. It's an episode that is meant to be heart-wrenching, but I don't agree with the episode's message about pain being good for you, and I don't like what the episode does to the characters. I end up taking very little away from this episode other than its misery porn, like watching DS9's Far Beyond the Stars. 2 out of 5.
That is something also that, I don't know. I feel like the cliche, well, if you'll never experience the good parts of life if you don't experience the bad parts. Like, really though? Like, I feel like I could go my whole life without someone I love dying horribly in a car crash or something. I don't feel like that's going to enrich my life if that happens.
If it happens, well, I guess I see it both ways, which is that if you have no downside to anything, you fail to embrace the good times, which is like just a classic human problem anyway. Like if you ever have like a chronic health thing that hurts, right? Like my back is a chronic health issue. On the days where my back is good, I don't appreciate the goodness enough. But when the days that it's bad, it makes me appreciate the goodness again, you know?
Yeah.
So it's like if all you have is just a B+ of a life, I don't think you'll get to the end of it appreciating your B+ without the downsides, because the dips are what make you recognize that like it's all fleeting and like you need to appreciate the good stuff that's happening to you.
Yeah.
So I don't know if pain is good, but I think that pain resets your brain to appreciate what you have in a way. They're like, and I would agree with you, like I would prefer no one die horribly, but I think it's more like the peak tragedy is probably not necessary, but a little bit of dips in the road I think are healthy for you or good for you.
Yeah, you break down. Your car can break down every now and then.
That's right. Yeah, the car won't start. You just say, "Damn you! This thing was starting yesterday, and I didn't stroke its dashboard affectionately every time it did."
Showing up for the doctor's appointment late, no problem.
No problem.
Showing up late and then finding out you've got terminal cancer, I could do without that part.
Well, the doctor would deliver the news to you in a way that's not sympathetic because you've screwed up her whole schedule.
Yes.
Royo, thank you very much for your comment. Atenga, I'll give this one to you, Clay. Atenga says, 2 weeks ago he wrote this about real life.
TNG asked, what does it mean to be a better society, to be just and to be moral? DS9 said, okay, but what does it take? And now here comes Voyager asking, hey, weren't the 50s just great? That the holographic doctor expects a 20th century suburban picket fence family with a stay-at-home wife is just stupid, especially when the episode has nothing to say about the class structure it's depicting, or even what a family might look like in the future. It's a shallow and manipulative nostalgia trip by the writers, and I say fuck it. Two scary modern ethnic kids with their rap music and nappy hair being a bad influence on my son out of 5. That was the point that actually kind of stuck out to me as I was watching this, as I was like, I understand what they're doing with the Klingon thing.
Yeah.
But having the son be like, it's just a cultural difference, and the father being like, no, it's not a cultural difference. These people are monsters. I was like, I think that we're tapping into something that they weren't intending to tap into here.
Yeah, it's a any of the darker skinned aliens are probably a bad. Make them Cardassians or something to avoid that. I think because the Cardassians have a little bit of a tough ethos to get around.
Well, and I think the cultural thing is weird too, because like,
well, it's wrong. It's the show. In my opinion, anyway, it's the show doing its Star Trek thing of being like wildly optimistic about stuff, and it's not reality to me, really.
Yeah.
So
yeah, it also, it is kind of strange that the doctor, I don't know. I think ultimately there's probably a better version of this story in there somewhere.
You mean it's weird that the doctor makes the 50s version?
Yeah.
See,
yeah.
I only disagree with this comment in the fact that they move away. They recognize that the 50s is a pristine Norman Rockwell painting in this, right? Like B'Elanna tells him that the thing that he's built, which is this sort of idealized 50s family, is not realistic at all. Again, it comes back to my problem. The version that she makes is also not realistic to me. It's like it's too much. So,
yeah. Well, you know, so here's something that is interesting. If they were to do this episode, this is what I feel like the difference between the Doctor and Data is. If they were to do this same episode with Data would build the second family first.
Okay.
You know what I mean? Because
Yep.
I think Data is mining the experience and digging for a more quote unquote real experience, which would then what's the word I'm looking for? Present itself as extreme to anyone who wasn't a robot.
Right. Yeah.
Whereas the Doctor is just looking for the gloss surface level experience that plays to that doesn't inconvenience him at all. So I think that's the interesting difference between the two of them, I think.
Yeah, that's fair, I think.
Because in the Data one, at a certain point, when they have the dinner scene with the second family, Troy or whoever's going to be like, Data, why did you build this awful family? And he would be like, well, because I needed to get a realistic depiction of all the highs and the extreme lows of the human experience and that kind of thing.
Yeah, that's the... Yeah, the Data not feeling emotion allows those stories to go differently because he wouldn't react to the weirdness of it. You know, he just absorbs it, and that's enough. It really just makes the but man, it's like DS9 just had the right idea. Like the Odo character is the outsider in DS9, the most outside of non-human type thing, right? But they gave Odo just a point of view of things, and it goes a long way to making his outsiderness actually feel like it fits the series, and you have a lot of stuff you can do with him, and it feels right. I think that's in our conversation about whether or not the Doctor and Data are too similar to each other. I think it's because Data is extremely well defined, and I think that the Doctor is slightly less well defined. He's kind of just a copy of this idea. Set to a hologram, and they've never really taken the time to say what is the Doctor's thing at this point. Like, what is he trying to do?
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Point XG says, real life 90s Trek wasn't ready to fully embrace a largely non-sci-fi story at this point. I think there was enough to work with regarding the Doctor having a family story to fill a whole episode. Picardo is definitely good enough to carry that for the full hour. The weird anomaly storyline is standard Trek fare, and it doesn't really bring anything aside from some Tom and B'Elanna flirting. I guess no one cared about anything on that alien space station. No, we did not.
Yeah, they really just dump that whole thing once they find the anomaly. They don't even try to figure out what happened.
No, fuck that thing. There's only 60 dead. We got one sick girl in this. We got one holographic sick girl in his bed. Taxile Bear says, real life, the Doctor's self-inflicted sitcom family nightmare is very entertaining, fits the character, and explores some data-esque curiosity. I can't comment on the anomaly B-plot because I don't remember anything about it.
Fair.
Dialing Up Star Trek says, I am not ashamed to say that this episode made me cry a couple times, and I would not change anything about it. I love the Doctor's journey and the messages that this episode is sharing. Messages about family, unrealistic expectations, and loss. How life comes with the good and the bad, and to come together during the bad times because it makes you stronger. This is a 5 out of 5. Come on, guys, have a heart. Great speech by Tom Paris episode. 5 out of 5. 5 out of 5. I don't think you're the last 5 out of 5. Oh, here's another one. Ben Espinosa says, could this be Voyager's inner light? Yeah, it could be. Is it exploitative? Yes, but that's the point. Doc's Hollow family teaches him all about real life, and as a father of two, it hit the nail on the head. And yes, I teared up when poor Belle died, but it felt natural to the story. Also, nice character work with Tom and B'Elanna. Another 5 out of 5.
Wow. All right.
Powerful opinions. Jonas, I'll send you Jonas's, actually, because you haven't read one in a while. He brings us back down with his take on this.
It's just a 2-word review of real life. It says
real
shit life. Real shit, yeah. As a human, I find it hard to empathize with holographic images. The obvious exception, of course, is the Doctor, whom we have had a long time to know and love. As for his holographic family, we don't know them. Even if some of us can sympathize with the Doctor because, say, we are parents ourselves, still one episode is not enough to make us truly appreciate his connection to his family and to feel anything about it as a result. 2 out of 5.
I guess I should say something as a parent about this. There is how do I explain? So there is something changed when becoming a parent, when I'm presented with a storyline like this, right? And the thing that has changed is that when I see the child actor pretending to die, I I do think about my kids saying the same thing, sort of like that happens, and I sort of like view it that way. But I don't know what I'm really trying to say here. So, but
what about when the other child actor tells you you're a fucking asshole?
Well, then I imagine the other child saying that, and I'm like, that's why you're my least favorite. There's something. So I do have this sense of like, yes, like if you're a parent and you have these storylines, it does change it slightly, but it only changes it in that I see it through. I imagine something happening to my child that this story is sparking in my brain, right? But I don't feel any different for the holographic character on the TV show. Does that make sense? Like
Sure.
I only get affected in the sense that I think about if this happened to my kid, that would make me sad, but it doesn't. That sort of manipulation doesn't work on me in terms of seeing the TV show as being any different. And I wonder, before I had kids, I would have thought that the ending scene was terrible, I think. And now I just think it's like very bad. So I don't know. It hasn't really swayed me in any direction, but I was wondering, how did you feel about the death scene? Was it like purely awful? Were you rolling your eyes the whole time, or did it do anything for you?
Well, what you just said is also the same reason why when someone else's kid runs into the street after a ball, you just stand there and watch, right?
Yeah, I don't yell. If you yell, someone will say you got to be quiet. Don't run into the street, kids. It's a bad idea.
Yeah, I thought it was way over the top. Like I found myself
imagining Pliskin was telling you that he can't see.
Kind of.
Is it ever going to end?
I found myself affected by it a bit, but more often than not, I felt like I was just kind of going, I get it. You know, it's just
they swelled the music hard. They put some real music swells in there.
Yeah, it's way too after school, especially
when the family comes in the door together, you know, and he's like, "Come in, family. Let us sit with our daughter." And I thought it was incredibly over the top. Did you prefer the son plot with the gang storyline?
That was pretty silly too.
Okay.
I thought the best part was the beginning of it when he comes home for the first time and the wife has to rush out and the daughter can't find her clothes.
After it's gone crazy.
The son is this, that. Like I thought they nailed that stuff. But then once it turned into over the top melodramatic death scene and
gang
my son
violence,
is becoming a gang violence.
Quote unquote Klingon. Yeah. Changeling says, real life, I really like this episode. Even with the B plot dragging, the juxtaposition of the two serves as a good example of how to write a good sci-fi story. A plot has aliens and holograms, sure, but it's something simple and relatable, a family drama. Whereas the B plot is say a lot of big words and shake the camera. Although one nitpick, why does the doctor need to be on the holodeck if he's a computer program? Can't he just run the simulation in his head? 5 after-school specials about teaching your kids to stay away from those of different races out of 5.
I was wondering that too. I actually didn't realize he was actually taking up holodeck time and space with this. I thought he was just doing this like inside his program.
No, he beams himself right in there and takes. I like the idea of him taking up space and other people waiting their turn and being upset that it's the doctor in there. I will say that there are kids that you hate that your kids hang out with. They might not be Klingon and they might not be a different race, as Changeling is saying, but there are some bad kids out there, man. Matt Ross.
Do you in retrospect realize that you hung out with bad kids you didn't realize at the time?
I knew my parents didn't like them too.
Yeah. I only had a couple. There were a few kids that in retrospect I'm like, I understand why my mother acted weird around this person.
Yeah. Well, because when you're kids, you think that your parents don't know or notice anything, but it's like especially when you're like young, and it's like, Jesus, guys, you guys are fucking stupid, and like I understand everything that you're trying to hint at, but I had a couple like that, that like and I think maybe I kind of maybe understood, but I certainly thought that my parents were overreacting, although I understand now the downside of that stuff. Your parents know more than you think they do. Mm-hmm. This is Matt Ross with Real Life.
Real life, just to get the B plot out of the way. It's odd how after learning that a space station had 60 dead scientists from something, Janeway, with a bloodlust smile, wants to take a chance exploring it with the ship. I actually wanted to know more about the weird subspace thingy. As to the family, going from Leave It to Beaver and then injecting TV family hell is quite jarring. Now that B'Elanna is wearing a braid, I guess that means she can ruin someone's fantasy or make Tom's. The family plot with its arguments distracting the Doctor's work is semi-relatable, and the sad ending was ably acted with some heart. 3 hourglass wobbles out of 5.
I have to say that B'Elanna is the most differently spelled name of any character in Star Trek, and I do not know how to correctly spell her name, so everyone gets some points here. But
yeah, I have no idea. I assumed it was how Matt is. It was a B apostrophe.
I think it's more complicated than that. Hold on, B'Elanna Torres. So it's B apostrophe ELANNA. It's B'Elanna. B'Elanna.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
So now to quickly forget that, knock that out of my brain. Don't need to hold on to that fact. Groppler John Zorn says, real life random thoughts. 1, the idea of pausing grief is worthy of examination, and this story seems a genuine effort at realizing it. 2, I can't help but think that Worf would have made a better dad for young Jeffrey than he was for Alexander. 3, that Klingon kid had teeth that even ADR can't save. 4, why wouldn't the Doctor think to go to B'Elanna to seek a programming solution to save his fake daughter's life? And Groppler John Zorn spelled B'Elanna correctly, so we'll go to him in the future. And then 5, in my gut, I just can't believe that if you leave a hologram on long enough, it somehow becomes sentient. My Mac Pro has been on since 2008, and it's not ordering the Stepford Wives on Amazon. 3 out of 5. Thanks very much. This is not a real comment. I'll give you this one, and then I'll take the last one. This is Jaron Hatch.
Real life.
Is this the real life?
So, did B'Elanna program the computer to axe the Doctor's daughter because she was so put out by the saccharine dinner? Or is this the holodeck going kill happy again? Either way, there is some serious sadism going on here, especially since the son is also into cutting, apparently. Mm-hmm. It's not exactly an accurate portrayal of a bog standard week of family life, but boy, does it make for great television. Why, oh why, though, do they have to fill half the runtime with a totally unrelated technobabble B-plot? God damn fucking Voyager.
Mm-hmm.
4 after-school games of Parisi squares ending with a child fatality out of 5.
Hold on.
I just always assume like Parisi squares was like Pogs or something, which is why it's that much more shocking that this child died.
I thought it was checkers. Okay, so it was a vigorous and rather violent athletic game played by people of many worlds and ages during the 24th century. Its popularity among the youth was a concern for parents. Players were called Parisi's players.
I'm going to say great band name, nerdy band name that not like practically nobody would get.
Yeah.
Like if you're looking for a nerdy band name,
this is it.
That you want to, the people who are in the know,
yeah.
But it's not something that you need to like would really ding anybody else's alarm.
Yeah.
Parisi Squares is fantastic.
Would you call yourself the Parisi Squares or just Parisi Squares?
If you want to be cool, probably just Parisi Squares.
Okay.
Because it almost if you say the Parisi Squares, it almost brings up an image that immediately, even though you don't know why. Like you say, like, oh, the Parisi Square. Yeah, I get it. Yeah, sure.
Yep. Yeah. Parisi. I went to see Parisi Square. Yeah, Parisi Squares. I think I would also do without the. And we'd call ourselves the Parisi's player. It would be like the Ramones. I'd be Wes Parisi. You'd be Clay Parisi.
We got Gino Parisi over here.
Oh boy. Samuel asked with the final comment. Excuse me. This cold has just settled in my chest. Real life writer. Quote, hey, I've got a really good story idea about the Doctor experiencing the ups and downs of parenting and the complexities of raising children, but it's only 20 minutes. Can you help me flesh it out? Producer, no thanks. Let's just stick Tom Paris in a space hurricane for the other 20 minutes. That'll do the trick. 2 actors terrible at playing Klingons out of 5. Thanks, patrons, for leaving your thoughts at patreon.com/the Pensky File. If you want to do it, you go there, patreon.com/the Pensky File. Leave your thoughts, and we'll read them on the podcast. Clay, on a scale of 1 to 5, what are you going to give real life? I think the patrons ended up at like a 3. There were a couple 5s and some lows, and then a couple 3s in there. So
I think I'm going high 3 on this one.
Okay.
I appreciate this. I appreciate the swing, even though this half of it is.
Yeah.
Why can't they just recognize when they have a concept worth exploring and just go, hey, maybe we don't. Why don't you guys take a week off, go see your families, and we're gonna go actually explore this concept for a bit.
My favorite. Hold on. Let me see if I can find the little factoid here. Yeah, so this is my favorite little factoid. It just shows like the era in time that this was made. The CGI effects of the episode is utilized to depict the astral eddies were created by CGI supplier Foundation Imaging. Peter Lorison, producer, who thought the astral eddy as a space tornado, was amazed that effects had advanced to the point where the visual effects sequences of the episode could be produced. Shortly after making this, he said, "We just did a show on Voyager where we portrayed a huge twister in space. If you had asked me to do that on TNG, I would have fallen off of my chair and said, 'What are you talking about? How much money do you have? And do you have 2 years to do it?' Now, 10 years later, we're able to do it on the same schedule that we were for TNG, and we're able to do an extremely convincing job of a tornado that's churning and tossing things around." It looks terrible, but right, all I could think of there is like it's that meme of like there was like a video game magazine from like 1995, and it showed like the original Doom monster, and it was like, "Our graphics going to get any better than this?" Mm-hmm. And it's like, I sure
if you had asked me in 1992, I would have had steam coming out of my ears. We can't do that.
Falling out of his chair.
I not too long ago, I rewatched the movie Spawn based on the
Leguizamo one.
Yes, based on the comic book character, and
they remade that, right? Isn't there a new Spawn?
No, they've Todd McFarlane has been threatening to make another Spawn movie since this one came out 30 years ago and has not yet managed to do it.
They didn't remake it.
No, never.
Am I hallucinating that? Oh, okay. Sure.
There was a cartoon.
Yes.
Which I also tried to watch again, and it was like unwatchable.
Really?
I made it through like I wasn't even like paying it. I was working while I was watching it, and even that I was like, I got to shut this off. I can't. This is too much. But the movie, someone had posted on Twitter the last final confrontation between Spawn and the evil demon Malbolgia.
Yeah.
And it is safe to say, I noticed this as I was watching it as well, they bit off a bit more than they could chew in 1995 or 6 or whenever the hell this was, 97 maybe.
Yeah.
It is a CGI spectacular on a scale that even today I think would be difficult to do. And it is just trash. It is really, really bad.
We should do the Spawn movie for Patreon.
Oh God. The Violator looks pretty good though, but all things considered. But
I mean, is Spawn a good idea, or is Spawn just like a great idea to 12-year-old me?
Yes, great idea to 12-year-old you.
Okay.
It's got a lot of potential, but I collected probably, I want to say the first 50 Spawn comics.
Wow, they even had that many? I thought it was like a relative...
No, it's still going.
Oh, my God. I thought it was like a
now.
limited run thing. Okay, never mind.
No, it's still going. And I could not tell you a single storyline.
Yeah.
Like, it's the setup is really great.
Yeah, the
he's
setup.
An assassin.
His backstory is great. Yeah.
Yeah, he's an assassin who gets killed, gets assassinated by the people he works for, and then he gets offered, in hell, he gets offered the chance to come back and see his family. He just has to take on the role of leading Hell's army.
Yeah.
And he says yes, but he gets tricked by the devil, that old scamp.
Yeah.
And he sends him back.
Who sees that? Who saw this one coming?
I know. And he sends him back 5 years in the future, and he's all fucked up looking. But honestly, I think the most ingenious part that doesn't get enough love is, I don't know if they do, it's probably long gone at this point, but when it started, the book started, the deal was he had all of this demon power energy that he could use to like blast stuff and like make his armor bigger and spikes and chains and shit.
Yeah.
But there was a limited amount of it. And so at the end of every issue, there would be a little clock in the bottom corner of the page showing how much power he had left.
Right.
And so theoretically, it's like, well, if he keeps using the power, so this is, I think it was just an excuse for him to be able to shoot stuff out of his hands, but also need to use gigantic guns.
Right.
So a little bit of both.
Yeah. Because that's not draining of the power if you just get some hardware.
Right.
Yeah.
But I always thought that the draining power thing was a nice little wrinkle.
Yeah, that's not. He can't recharge it somehow. He can't suck a soul out or something.
Not at the beginning. I'm sure they probably came up with a reason and then got rid of the entire conceit. But
yeah. Is a cool look, but
great look. Yeah. Because it's literally, Todd McFarlane said, Spawn is cool. How to make Spawn cool? Well, Spider-Man's really popular, and so is Batman.
Yeah.
What if both?
Yeah, that's true. He's got a skull for a codpiece, which is nice.
Yes.
Thanks, patrons, for leaving your thought. Oh, wait a minute. I didn't read it. You gave it a high 3, I suppose. Yeah. Did I interrupt you, or were we going down some other path, or are you done with your rating?
No, I'm done. I mean, I can talk about Spawn for the rest of the night if you want.
We'll save it for the Patreon. Because we'll do Spawn and we'll do Virtuosity on the Patreon.
You know what? Oh, let's do it. I'll do that.
We'll do those two. That'll be our promise for next month. If we don't, maybe we'll get one in this month because it's the middle of the month. I'm going to give it a 2 because half of it being that B plot means it kind of has to be a 3 mathematically, even if it was great. And I think that the real life sitcom family is not great, so I'll give it a 2 to split the difference a little bit more.
Sure.
We went right through it, but I thought that the B plot, the space anomaly, was like that's just terrible. That's a terrible storyline.
It's really bad.
The holodeck family has some potential. I think it just has problems. So I'm gonna take it down to a 2 and we'll call it there. So you give it a 3, I'll give it a 2, and we'll continue marching on. We're almost at the end of season 3 of Voyager. Distant Origin is the next episode. Patreon.com/the Pensky Files is the place to support us. Get to leave your comments. You'll eventually see Virtuosity and Spawn and all the other stuff that Clay and Amanda do, and Sean and Clay.
And then we will see a number of people cancel their subscriptions.
That's you know what? Spawn was also kind of interesting in that. What's his birth name? Tom something?
Al Simmons.
Al Simmons, who's a black man, right?
Yes.
Which was which I always thought was just kind of like shocking. I guess it's because it's this weird thing too, because for 99% of the comic or whatever, or the story, he's going to look like Spawn, right? So it's like he doesn't look like anything at that point. But then you saw the flashback, he's just like, wow, blowing my mind. Mm-hmm. That's diversity.
It's revolutionary because he's a black superhero who doesn't have black in the name of his character.
Oh, yeah, that's a good point.
He's not Black Spawn.
That's
Although it would be really funny if they had a second Spawn who was a white guy who they referred to as White Spawn.
They should have
turn the tables a bit.
Well, he should do exactly the same thing, but he goes to heaven as a white guy.
Oh Lord.
It's just like he gets sent back as like Heaven Spawn or something like that, and it's just incredibly awkward for everybody reading. That's it. Thanks everybody for listening to Patreon's. This is not Patreon's content. I've said Patreon too many times this last whole meeting. Do you have anything you want to say, Clay?
Check out the Rotten Horror Picture Show on Patreon and on your regular feeds. This month, Amanda and I are covering Dario Argento's Inferno for our Video Nasties coverage. And Badass, we have just finished season 2 of Batman Beyond. We'll be back with Return of the Joker relatively soon, somewhere in there. And if you're at a comic book store, pick up Batman White Knights Presents Generation Joker, which is on the stands, written by myself and Sean and Katana Collins and drawn by Mirka Andolfo. And it's a fun book.
Thanks everybody for listening. Hope you enjoyed the content today. We'll be back with Distant Origin, which is our next Voyager episode. Otherwise, we'll see you.